This question is asking us to find the axis of symmetry, and the axis of symmetry is always going through the x-coordinate of your vertex. So if we can find our vertex, then we can find our axis of symmetry. Now this is a good example because it's going to deal with some fractions. So I'm completing the square. First thing is we factor out the -2, and keep the -3 there. This will always work out nicely. The first factoring is always easy. The second factoring sometimes involves fractions. Factoring out a -2 is like dividing by a -2. And if you keep your life in fractions, it's really easy because you can just change this. 5 divided by 2 is 2.5, but leave it as a fraction as 5/2. And because you're taking out a negative, the plus would change to a negative. Then we leave our space and leave our space. And now here is where the idea of completing the square and what happens is very important. Because it's not as easy to mental math and say, what would I have to get the 5/2? But we recognize that this number from here to here, we always get by dividing by 2, which is the same as multiplying by 1/2. And taking this number and multiplying it by 1/2 is really easy, because 1/2 times 5/2 is just multiply the tops, multiply the bottoms, minus 5/4. This is so much easier in fractions than it would be in decimals. Because now, to fill in our space, we have to do 5/4 times 5/4, which will be plus, and I'll do it in blue, plus 5 times 5 is 25, 4 times 4 is 16. In the other space, what have I actually done? I've actually multiplied this, I've actually subtracted, if I times it by 2, I've actually subtracted 50/16. So to compensate, and I'm going to reduce it from 50/16 to 25/8, the opposite of subtracting 25/8 would be adding 25/8. Again, how do you add fractions? I'm going to take an extra step here and change 3 to a common denominator here. Add those together, I get plus 1/8. And so my vertex is 5/4, 1/8, which means my axis of symmetry, and an axis of symmetry is always an equation, x equals 5/4. All right, questions you can circle on this one? 8 and 10.
Mr. JR,
Yes.
why when you multiply -2 by the fraction, it doesn't get -1?
So if I multiply the -2 times the 25/16, I get -50/16. Which means if I think about doing something to the same side to compensate, if I've subtracted 50/16, I have to do the opposite, which is add 50/16. And I reduced it to 25/8, but that's why it's the opposite. So here I've added inside, but with the negative in front, I've actually subtracted, so the opposite is added.